Okay, class, starting in on circles and circumference. First of all, our vocab should have defined these earlier today, but the diameter is basically all the way across the circle. So if you have a circle, the diameter is the distance across, and it goes through the middle, which is called the center of the circle. The radius then would just be halfway across, so it's half the diameter. And the circumference is if we have a circle like this, the circumference is all the way around that object. So the outside, it's kind of like perimeter in any other type of shape you're finding. And then pi, this is basically, we're going to use 3.14 or the pi key on your calculator. If you use the pi key, then you get a little bit more accurate answer, but 3.14 will be acceptable as well. All right, let's look at some formulas here. And this is when we're finding the circumference. Okay, so these are our circumference formulas. We have C standing for circumference, and then 2 pi r. Now, there's actually two formulas here. They're finding the same thing. It just depends on what you're given. Are you given radius or are you given diameter? All right, so we have 2 pi r, or pi d. This is meaning 2 times pi times radius. This is meaning pi times diameter, which really this is the same thing. 2 radiuses make 1 diameter, and so they're the exact same formula. It just helps to know which one you have, radius or diameter. All right, so let's go down here, and it says, how do you find the radius using a given diameter? Well, if we have radius, and we have diameter, we're given the diameter, we have to cut it in half or divide it by 2, and that will give us the radius. Okay? How do you find the diameter using a given radius? Well, we have to times the radius by 2 to get the diameter. So if you know r, you can times it by 2 to get diameter. If you know diameter, you can divide it by 2 to get radius. And that's helpful when we go to use these formulas here in just a second. Okay, so let's talk about some steps when we're finding the circumference. And here's this example of this watch over here, and we're going to use it as we plug along here. So the first step is see which you have. That doesn't make sense, does it? Okay, the radius or the diameter. Okay. Now, step 2. If you have been given the radius, use 2 pi r. If you have been given the diameter, use pi d. Okay, so over here in this example right here, you'll notice that this is the circle. I'm pointing to all the way across the circle, right through the middle, so that is actually our diameter. So that stands for d. And so I know for this example I'm going to be using this formula. The next step says to plug the radius or diameter, whichever you're given, into the correct formula. Okay, and so here we have the diameter. I'm going to take it and plug it in. So I'm going to do this right here. I know that I'm finding the circumference and I'm given the diameter, so I'm using this one right here. Okay, so pi times d. So I have c equals pi times 28. I'm plugging that in for d. And then I'll show you both ways on the calculator. So on these calculators that we're using in class, the pi button, let's see if I can find it now, is right here. So you can type pi times 28, and you'll notice it gives it to you in like a pi form, reading pi. So I would prefer that you actually use 3.14 times 28 so we can get an actual decimal. You can change that other one to a decimal and I'll show you that in class. So this is equal to 87.92. And that would be millimeters because that's around the outside, and that's the units that we used for the diameter. Okay. So the last step here, we're going to add in a step here, step 4. I just want you to solve, okay, your formula. Once you've plugged in, just solve it, and then you should be done. All right, so let's go down here to find the circumference of each circle. First of all, I want to go through and real quickly tell if we have the radius or the diameter. So obviously this is all the way across, we have diameter. Here we have the radius because it's halfway. Here you'll see that this is actually a semicircle. I'm given the diameter, and here I'm given the radius of a semicircle. And these are a little bit different, so pay attention when I get closer to those, okay? Alright, so let's plug into our formula. I know because this is diameter, I'm using pi times d. So this is equal to 3.14 times 17, which is what I'm plugging in here. And when I do that, I get 53.38, and that's my answer. And we can put meters because it is circumference, and that's the units we're using. Alright, so here's another circle. You'll see that I'm given the radius, and we already said that that's what we're given. So now instead of using this pi times d, I'm going to use the 2 pi r formula. And here I know that I need to take 2 times 3.14, and this time I'm going to times it by 3 because that's the radius. So 2 times 3.14 times 3, and I get 18.84. And we could say feet. Alright, so here is a semicircle. These are a little bit different. You have to be careful. There's one last step in the end. So let's first plug it into this pi times diameter. And this is really 3.14 times 22. So let's figure out what that is. And we get 69.08. Now, this is for an entire circle, so that would be if we had another half down here, and we're talking about the circumference, the outside around it. So if I only have half of it, well then I only need half of this. And so I'm going to actually divide it by 2 to get half of it gone. Okay, so I know that this portion right here, and I'm going to highlight it, okay, this portion right here, that equals 34.54. Okay, now there's one more step that students always forget, and this is what I don't want you to do on the test, okay, so don't make this mistake, okay? That's not the complete circumference, right? Because that's not, well, okay, that is a lie. This is the circumference of the semicircle. The problem is usually it will ask you for the perimeter of the semicircle, which means it wants you to add this back in, okay? So then we would add 22 to it because that would be the entire outside of the semicircle. So it's a little bit trickier, but not too bad. And so the answer here for the perimeter, or circumference you could say, I guess, is 56.54.
Teachers, lunch is now being served in the little theater. Please come help yourself.
Yay, I get to go to lunch. No, wait, I have to finish this real quick. Okay. So now this one, same idea. We're going to do pi, or 2 pi r this time because it's the radius. And so it's 2 times 3.14 times 4. So 2 times 3.14 times 4, and we get 25.12. Okay, but then remember this is just a semicircle, so to find this portion on the outside I'm going to divide that by 2, and that's going to give me 12.56, and that's talking about this. And then if I was wanting to add this back in, I would say plus 4, and so I would get 16.56 as the perimeter essentially of this semicircle. Alright, I hope that wasn't too confusing. These last two are a little bit tricky, so just be careful with those. I want you to pause and try these two on your own, and then when you come back you should have the answers. Actually, I'm going to do them real fast. I forgot I couldn't pause this because I was using my phone this time instead. And not moving enough, so the lights went out. Okay, hopefully I didn't make any mistakes because I rushed on that, but here should be the answers. Come with any questions you have tomorrow.